Okay, we're going to do our last two project reports. This actually is one client only, and that's unusual. Like I said at the beginning, we usually have four clients altogether. In this case, the client was the High Line of New York City, and we made a decision that it's a large enough system, park system, that we should actually divide the class in two. So there'll be two reports on the High Line, and the first one will be the science team, the New York City High Line, science team report. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, policy team, I apologize. Same title, New York City High Line policy team.
Good morning, everybody. We are part of the policy group that is working on the High Line for this past semester. We were tasked with researching and assessing sustainable solutions that the High Line can implement in the future years. My name is Austin Perry. I'm a senior in GS and a sustainable development major. And before we begin, we're going to give a quick introduction to everybody that helped work on this project.
I'm Jenny, and I'm a senior majoring in sustainable development.
I'm Avi. I'm a senior majoring in economics and sustainable development.
Orange.
Yes.
I'm Natalie. I'm a history and econ major. And I'm Sydney. I'm a political science major.
And then our one buddy, Dan, couldn't make it today, but he's a senior and SysDev major as well. For the last 3 months, we've been partnering with Nicole DeFeo, who is the planning and design manager for the High Line here in New York City. And she had asked us to find ways that the High Line can objectively showcase how it's sustainable, not only to the community, but that if it could be replicated in other cities, that it could be a benefit to those cities as well. And before we have Abhi explain a little bit about what we were able to accomplish this semester, I'm just going to give a quick history lesson on the High Line so we're all on the same page. And just so everyone knows, this is a walkthrough through the High Line, so if you haven't been there, this will give you a couple minutes of what's going on. It was built in 1934 as an elevated railroad track to transport goods to and from the industrial centers here in New York City, which was great until trucking started doing all that for them. And by the 1980s, the railroad was going largely unused, which then spurred the discussion of what to do with it. Are we going to keep it? If we do, what are we going to do with that? If we take it down, what are we going to do with that? So in the 1990s, community members from the neighborhood of the Friends of the High Line got together and successfully lobbied the city to have an open ideas competition. The city liked it, so they did. And in 2003, the winner was selected, and it was going to be a park. By 2006, CSX, which was the train company that owned the railroad, had signed over all the land to New York City, and groundbreaking had begun. The park opened in 2009, and it's been seeing several million visitors every year since then. The park is known for a lot of different things, but what it specializes in doing is, since it is an outdoor park in an urban center, it does everything from charity events to yoga classes to Tai Chi. It has horticulture clubs and supports local vendors. So with millions of people coming through, Nicole had asked us, we want to be able to not just say, hey, we're better for the community. We want to be able to objectively show that we are relative to other people. So with that, Abhi is going to come up and explain a little bit about what we were able to accomplish this semester.
Thanks, Austin. One of our primary aims when starting this project was to look into how the High Line could potentially be recognized with a certification. As you may know, certifications officially recognize a project for a particular level of achievement, and oftentimes have been shown to improve credibility for the project. So what we're hoping for in this case is that the High Line could be recognized with a certification for sustainability. Basically, the more popularity a certification has, the more the thrust for sustainability. And the High Line can then use a certification as an objective metric by which it can speak about its sustainable practices. And I know people may or may not associate the High Line with sustainability, but the reality is is that there are a lot of objective, sustainable things about it. So back in October, a few members from our team and I had the opportunity to go down to the High Line and even speak to the High Line's gardeners who actually took us to see what goes on behind the scenes. And this was definitely a very interactive experience. Not only did we get to know about the gardeners' individual experiences, but we also, for example, were able to see the High Line's composting unit called the Rocket. And we additionally learned several interesting facts, such as, for example, again, the High Line actually uses old coffee grounds from the Standard Hotel nearby as part of its composting as well. So going back to certifications, accessibility is the issue here. There's so many amazing sustainable practices that the High Line implements, but how will people necessarily know about this if the public is not aware of all this information? So until these practices are actually codified by a certification, much of the public will not know. So this is where CITES comes in. CITES is a sustainability-focused framework that encourages practices that protect ecosystems and also enhance the mosaic of benefits they continuously provide to our communities, such as climate regulation, carbon storage, and flood mitigation. And what we really liked about CITES is that it provides performance measures instead of prescribing practices, which then allows for a project to be as creative and flexible as they wish. It's based on a point system, so the number of points the project earns determines the particular certification level it achieves. And furthermore, to receive this CITES certification, a project has to fulfill several criteria, such as site context, water and water usage, soil and vegetation, education, human health and well-being, innovation, just to name a few. So we found all these categories to be applicable to the High Line, and we hence decided to proceed with CITES. So now we're also looking for other certifications in addition to CITES that the High Line could potentially fit under. And so the goal was to have these certifications, most of which we're close to, whereas prestigious as CITES, fit our aims and objectives. And sure enough, we did find a number of secondary certifications. One of the secondary certifications that we particularly liked is Envision. Envision is a certification that measures the sustainability of an infrastructure project through construction and maintenance. It offers verification and awards for recognizing project achievements. It has 60 sustainability criteria called credits, organized into 5 different categories: quality of life, leadership, resource allocation, natural world, and climate and risk. So Envision essentially offers a categorical twist compared to CITES that measures the High Line's performance on a more broad basis. But both certifications ultimately do use a point system, which makes it easy to measure. So I'm going to hand it over to Jenny.
Yeah, so with these, finding the secondary certifications, we found some obstacles along the way. One of the biggest obstacles that we found was not having sufficient data to see how many points the High Line was eligible in terms of CITES and for other secondary certifications. So in this case, like Abhi mentioned, we either contacted the High Line employees or we actually went to the High Line to talk to the gardeners and to Nicole itself, and to Nicole. But then we noticed that while these certifications provide as measurable metrics, they didn't necessarily include the psychological benefits that green spaces have, especially in urban areas. So this forms the biophilic design concept, which basically reduces stress, improves cognitive function and creativity, healing, and just improves general well-being. So the High Line uses biophilic design principles by incorporating interactions with nature. There are a lot of plant and tree features. If you walk along the High Line, you can hear the water running, you brush into trees, and you just kind of escape from the city. So there are also warmer and cooler temperatures along the High Line, which the data team will discuss in their temperature analysis. So yeah, the High Line basically has biophilic design in mind. There's another, and then the Bank of America Tower in Midtown is another example of a building that uses biophilic design. It's actually the first commercial high-rise to receive LEED Platinum certification. And with this design and performance of the building, it's intended to set a new standard for commercial high-rises and for an office work environment in general. So here they focus on emphasizing daylight, having fresh air, and being connected to the outdoors. So besides biophilic design, the team also explored the ways in which the High Line can demonstrate its commitment to sustainability besides certifications. And so we created a sustainability report, which is easy to read, it's accessible, and we're able to highlight the holistic sustainability that the High Line has. So we focus on the 4 main parts that we thought the High Line did a really good job at, which is biophilic design, community engagement, its commitment to sustainable development goals, and the economic benefits. And so in addition to the sustainability report, we think that with more numerical and factual information on the website, the High Line can really demonstrate its sustainability. Moving forward, we think that also introducing an art contest is something that the High Line can also engage with the community. And so we thought that every month students can submit a hand-drawn picture that highlights one of the High Line's themes, such as sustainability, its events, and just themes like that. And so, and we also thought that this would be a fun way, because that's how the High Line was introduced, is through a contest. So that would be a cool way to also engage with the community.
And just to recap, what we ended up doing essentially was researching dozens and dozens of certifications that deal with sustainability. Some overlap quite heavily with one another, others are just off in their own island. So we had to sift through all those to give a sort of proper accounting to the client, Nicole, which ones are good, which ones she should pursue, and how to go about doing that. More importantly is, if the High Line chooses to be a leader in its space, does that mean that it just gets to the certification level and just stops right there, or does it go for the highest certification, or what does it choose to do with that? And how to increase points was one of our big deliverables. Was there's some low-hanging fruit that we think they can reach to get a better certification. And like I said, or like was mentioned, the Bank of America Tower is the first and only, to present knowledge, that has a LEED certified platinum, which is the highest rating. So it goes to show you, if something like the High Line were to achieve such a high rating in the sites or in vision, that it would be one of the first to do so, and thus making it a leader in that space. So with that, that brings this to a conclusion, and we will open this up for questions now.
Great, thanks. It sounds like a story where additional resources devoted to thinking about the certification, what you all were doing, community outreach, better communication. It sounds like there's a lot of potential to, really get even more out of the High Line. I guess what I'm wondering is there anything inherent in the High Line that might make it difficult to reach sort of full sustainability goals? Are there any aspects structurally or anything else that where it might not be able to achieve, where it might not just an issue of capacity and sort of people's effort, but where more systemically it might, for some other reason, be difficult to achieve full certification, for example?
The simple answer is it's doing a very good job right now with what it has. It's not shown up here, but to deliver to the client, we have actually gone through the certifications and assigned them a point value for the information we have. And they were gold. I want to say they could be gold if they had the paperwork to go along with the point values we've given them, which is right below platinum, so it's the second highest rating. With some low-hanging fruit they can also go and get. But your question is if it could be fully sustainable, that kind of goes to which metric you plan on using, because nobody's really going to be fully sustainable in every metric. But for what it does, where it's green space, where it reduces the heat island, the urban heat island effect, those things they do extremely well. And the data team's going to go on all to that. You're going to see color maps and everything that show you what it's going to do. So, does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, great. Sure.
What is the lowest hanging fruit?
The lowest hanging fruit? Sure, no, that's a great question. Do you want to talk about the art? And okay, well, I'll talk about that. Try to get some help, didn't get it. So some of the categories include innovation and education. Innovation can be just innovate. You come up with something. Education is the community outreach portion. What does the Highline do for you? What can we do for the Highline to make it a better community program? Great. The art contest, we kind of saw that as like an education innovation sort of thing to get more younger people involved in the Highline. But since you walked up here, I think you have something to say.
I was just going to say that one of the things we really noticed over the course of the semester is that the Highline already does a lot of things that count as sustainable. Like we mentioned, composting and the plants they use and the irrigation techniques they use. But part of our job was to research everything, and a lot of the information about what they're doing isn't publicly available. So we thought that maybe an easy way to just accomplish their mission was take what they're already doing and just format it in a way that the public would understand and the public would care about. So that's part of the reason we decided to do the sustainability report with the other team.
I feel like I'm monopolizing here. Central Park, does it have any certifications? Is this the kind of path that they've gone in, like the Central Park Conservancy? I have no idea, but it seems like another park in the city that should be doing something like this, or could be.
Yes, it's involved, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's involved with something, not a certification, but just a green, how do I want to say it? Like a green network, where just like any other park could be a part of without actually like being objectively certified in anything. So the Central Park, it's not a formal certification, but I could look that up for you in the next few minutes if you really need an answer.
And the Highline is really unique because of the way that it's an adaptive reuse project, as in it took this existing infrastructure and instead of tearing it down, they made something really special out of it. And so over the course of our research, we did find other parks throughout the country that are certified and that are similarly adaptive reuse projects. So it's not just the Highline, but we didn't specifically look into Central Park because it kind of has a different structure.
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you very much.